So, can I ask you a hypothetical question?
Oh, dear, I don't like hypothetical questions.
Well, I don't think you're going to like the real one either.
Do you have the papers?
Not yet.
This is a devastating security breach that was leaked out of the Pentagon. The most highly classified documents of the war. The Hague was very disturbed by that New York Times thing. I thought that, Mr. President, I think, unconscionable damn thing to them to do. Unconscionable. Of course, it's unconscionable on the part of the people that leaked it. Fortunately, it didn't come out in our administration. According to Hague, it all relates to the two previous administrations. Is that correct? That is right. But I hope that. My point is, are any of the people there who participated in this thing, in leaking it? That's my point. Do we know?
The United States, going into the Vietnam War, had a reputation for never losing a war. The Pentagon begins an internal investigation into Vietnam, questioning motives for staying as the war drags on. To save face, multiple presidents, from Kennedy until Nixon, had lied to the public about the state of the war, hiding the inevitable loss years before the public would know. As the decades drag on, the Vietnam War will become very unpopular with the American public, causing civil unrest and protests.
So, what all do you remember about the Pentagon Papers scandal?
Not a lot. I was busy raising my two children at that time, and I know it was a huge scandal. There was a lot of publicity, and that's pretty much it. My late husband was in the military and had served one term in Vietnam and was ordered to go back again, and he decided to retire instead. He was not willing to chance another tour of duty in Vietnam.
Kind of showing the public unrest there.
Yes. He did his duty and was comfortable with that.
What all do you think of how the Nixon administration handled the release?
The release of the papers was a little underhanded because they took them to the Supreme Court and brought charges against the Times and the Post. And fortunately for us, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of freedom of the press, which I'm glad they did. And I think it's very relevant to today's newspapers that are keeping us in the loop of really what's going on in the U.S. and the government and with our president.
Yes, so you would then agree with the majority opinion in that case?
Yes, I think so. I think there's a large majority of people who are very interested and are very wary of the information we get directly from our president and from both the Congress and the Senate. And it's counterbalanced by our newspaper and our medium.
Yes, especially now with all the mirror images of the past found in our current presidency. It's important to be aware of this.
We get so much false information fed to us through WikiLeaks and through Facebook, and it's been proven that Russia has interfered in our government, and yet we're not doing anything about it.
Yeah, so you then feel positively about Daniel Ellsberg, the man who leaked the papers?
Yes, I think he did a service to our country and to the people who live here in the United States, that he made us aware of what can happen and how the government controls the information and flow of information.
What do you feel about his contemporaries, such as Edward Snowden and the WikiLeaks website?
Well, I'm not very fond of WikiLeaks because I think they slant things to their favor, or whoever they're currying favor with at the time. Snowden, I'm not real sure how I feel about him. Sometimes I think he's a traitor. There are other times I think that he did a service to the country and to the people here so that we could be aware of what's going on that we're not being told about.
I guess that's it.
Short term, as a result of the Pentagon Papers scandal, there was a cloud of suspicion and doubt cast on Nixon and the executive office, and both the New York Times and the Washington Post were allowed to continue printing. The Vietnam War would end soon in 1975, and when Watergate would occur, there'd be a major investigation. For the long term, the press becomes more involved in keeping the government on the straight and narrow, and keeping your sources hidden is partially promoted by the ruling, and the government is more monitored than before. In conclusion, to kind of review this all, the Pentagon would conduct an internal study on the U.S. and its role in Vietnam, and members of this study would leak it to the New York Times and later the Washington Post. The Washington Post's failing financial status leads them to publish the pages of the study even after the New York Times had been attacked by Nixon for publishing pages of the very same study. The resulting court ruling would support the Times and the Post in publishing and set a precedent to support investigations into the government.